Hello, my fellow chatterers, boot camp worker routers, and all of you who've tuned in for a good old January TBR. And everyone else who's popped in because you're curious or you've got a bit lost. Welcome everyone. I'm Chatty, welcome to my channel Chatty the Mad Chatter, where I'm going to be chatting away madly about what I'm going to be reading in January. And to be perfectly honest, I have no idea. It could go any which way. I've just got a huge stack of books. And I thought I'd also give you some recommendations for the Bootcamp Readathon as well, whilst they pop into my brain. So I'm going to be talking about what I'm going to be reading. I have a buddy read that I will also be talking about. I'm going to be obviously talking about Bootcamp Readathon, and I will be talking about the past and future Readathon as well. So grab yourself a brew, get cozy, have a snack if you want to, and let's have a little chat. So first of all, if you are not sure what the Bootcamp Readathon is, have a look in the description box. You will find the channel for Courtney at Tangible Reads. You will also see a link to her announcement video as well, letting you know everything you need to know about it. She is the creator of the Bootcamp Readathon and has very kindly asked me to co-host along with another 11 people. So if you want to know more about that, you can see my announcement video, which I will link here. To give you all the information you need. I'm going to go on to talk about recommendations and things that I'm going to be possibly reading for it. I'm also going to be talking about the past and future Readathon, which is a Readathon created by Emily from Neva Novels. So please go in the description box and look at her channel, and you will find a link to her announcement video as well. There are 6 co-hosts for that one, and they will all be linked in to Emily's channel. So what am I going to be reading in January? Well, usually what I do with my TBRs is I play the game Bookworms and Bookladders, but I felt like I want to do something slightly different. So I thought what I'd do is I would do a sort of a mood read version of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a load of shorts. So I was going to do the first roll now, but I'm actually filming this quite midway in December. So I have quite a few weeks left of December. I have no idea what I'm going to be feeling in the mood for come January. So I thought there's no point me doing my first one. So I will release a short around New Year's Eve day, whatever's, of my first roll for my Bookworms and Bookladders game. And that will help me decide which of all these possibilities I'm going to be starting off the year with. So let's make this pile of possibilities, shall we? So the first one in the Bootcamp Readathon is Dumbell, to read a banned book. So best thing to do for this is looking at lists of banned, oh, drop my pen. Ugh, sorry. Looking at lists of banned books. I've got a few ideas here. The one I'm most likely to read is All American Boys by Jason Reynolds and Brenton Kelly. I love Jason Reynolds' The Long Way Down. You can't see it, but it is just behind me here on this shelf. It's a novel in verse, and it was just fantastic. Like the subject matter, the way it was told was amazing. And I wanted to read more Jason Reynolds. I have read another kind of sort of poetry collection story called Oxygen Mask, which I really enjoyed. So I'd really like to read a sort of more of a prose novel by him. And obviously this is also by Brendan Kelly. So this was banned in parts of the US for suggesting police brutality and systematic racism exist. So basically banned because they want to suppress things. There we go. So in protest, I definitely want to read this book. Another book you could also read that I have just read is Beartown by Frederick Backman. So I say this is an adult contemporary. It does have some young adult characters in it. I don't think there is anything in here that is too much for sort of teenagers to handle. There are very heavy topics in here. It does deal, there is an incident in the book. If you want to go in knowing absolutely nothing about it, I'm not going to mention what it is, but if you do want to kind of like check for trigger warnings and things like that, please click the story graph link and it will give you all the trigger warnings. and it will probably kind of go through what the event is that occurs in here. It is done very sensitively, and I thought it was handled really, really well. But the event that happens kind of tears this very close-knit town in two. It does a really good job of kind of like setting up what the life is like for everyone in here, and people's different opinions on a certain subject, and you as the reader change your opinions on characters due to how they react about the stuff that goes on in here. But it kind of looks at a whole host of characters, so it's not just focused on the younger people, it's also focused a lot on the adults as well. So for me, it kind of, because it's got that kind of all-encompassing approach, there is a lot of like adult concerns in here and ways of thinking. So I feel the appeal is more to adults, but I absolutely think that if you have YA readers who also like adult stuff, there is a lot in here. I think it's a really important book to read, and it was just handled really, really well. But this was banned in some parts of North Carolina. Parents told the school that it was just unnecessary. So like I said, I don't think this is a YA. However, should people want to read it, and should it kind of link in, I think it does link into a lot of things that I think is relevant for young people to be listening and thinking about and being considerate of. So if you are wanting to read a book where it raises kind of a lot of questionable things, then I'm just laughing at myself because I'm being really vague, and it's just because... Sorry. So I was just saying that I was just laughing because I'm being really vague, so I don't want to spoil it for people. But basically, the incident that occurs, it makes you not question so much the morality or what side you feel is correct, but kind of the fallout from it and how would you act. Like friendships, loyalty to what the right thing to do, the impact it can have on yourself and the community. All of those things are really like well explored in here, and it also like makes you realize other people's worth, and it makes you kind of look at the character's worth. So I think it's an absolutely brilliant book. I think for it to be labelled unnecessary just belittles the point of it and shows that it really just did not hit home for some people, or they've only looked at a certain part of it and they haven't like read through it and thought about it a bit more. Anyway, that's an option. Other options are Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. This has been on the banned book list. I think it was on there for racism and sexual promiscuity, I believe were the terms that were used in here that made people feel uncomfortable. And I think that's the thing with a lot of banned books, like people are made to question things. People don't like questioning things. It makes them feel uncomfortable. They don't want to be feeling uncomfortable, so they decide it's wrong. Anyway, this is the first part of Maya Angelou's series of autobiography. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is the first part, and it is a brilliant book, like just hearing about her life and where she kind of comes from and the childhood she experienced and things that she had to go through that kind of shaped her. It just absolutely blows my mind. I have read the first two. I really need to read the third one. I just don't own it yet. So it's one of those books that I need to buy. So that is also a possibility if I feel like if I'm ready to buy books at that time. I also recommend Genderqueer by Maya Kobe. This is a memoir written and illustrated by Maya Kobe about what it's like to kind of be growing up and discovering that you are non-binary. So it explores their life and their basically identity exploration, and there's moments of intense joy in here, and as well as kind of like deep pain, and it's just beautiful. The illustrations are absolutely gorgeous. It's just absolutely, it's just so much in here that's, it's just done so well. Trying to find one of the double page spreads here. Look, it's so pretty where you've got the different feelings and just the kind of the night and day kind of pictures. This is kind of almost like a journal spread, as well as the kind of more comic book kind of style of things as well. But it is so beautiful. It's such an impactful story, and it's really gorgeous. Final recommendation is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This is a YA contemporary, and I just love Angie Thomas's writing. She just really grips you and pulls you into the story, and it explores racism, police brutality, protesting, and just the way it does it, it's kind of like that, what is a life worth, and people's truth. And yeah, it was I don't know what the word is. It just really gripped me and kind of pulled me into the story. But there is a really kind of good essay about just kind of bearing in mind that this was written in, I think, 2015. I want to say 2015. No, 2017. And there have been some booktubers who are black who have discussed how this hasn't necessarily aged well, just in terms of like it's quite simplistic, and we've kind of moved on from kind of those conversations and have kind of like become like even kind of like deeper in unpicking, like it really shouldn't matter what people's perception of the person who has been killed is in here, and like the right and wrong morality shouldn't be about was this person, like, did they have the right to be alive? It kind of like turned into that kind of conversation, and like explored that, like they were presumed to be a drug dealer, but they weren't a drug dealer, but they were saying like that should be irrelevant, like regardless of whether or not they were a drug dealer, they shouldn't have been killed. Like you don't get to a pass because this person was a drug dealer, so it's fine, they're dead, like those kind of conversations. So this was a brilliant book. I really loved it, but I think just be aware of kind of how conversations have moved on in terms of that since then. And I will try and find that video that discusses this, and I will, if I can, I will link it here. And there is one more. 13 minutes and I'm still on the first prompt. This is going well. There is one more that could be a possibility for me, but I think it's unlikely for me to get hold of it at the moment. And this is The Land by Mildred D. Taylor. This is the first book in the chronological order of the Logan family saga, the most well-known book being Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. Which I think was either the first or second book published. I can't remember in relation to everything else when The Land was published, but this tells the story of the protagonist from Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry's grandfather. So it's about acquiring the land and his journey to that point in his story, and kind of what he struggled with to be someone who is black purchasing land. I'm really excited to read this. I really want to read the whole of the Logan family saga because I absolutely adored my reread of Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, but it's quite hard to get. I want all of the books in a set. I want them all to match, and I can get hold of certain ones, but I think this is a novella. I don't know how big it is, but definitely the novellas are really hard to get hold of in the UK, so I'm gonna have to do some digging to try and acquire them, and it's gonna cost me some pennies, so it's probably not going to happen in January because we won't have the pennies in January. But it's a possibility, and if you can get hold of it, then I definitely want you to let you know about it, so it's so you can do that, because my library definitely does not have them. My library didn't even have Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, which is shocking, quite frankly, but there we go. Yeah, so this has been banned in southern states of America due to painful language. And Mildred D. Taylor has a really wonderful like paragraph about that in defense of her work. She said she has chosen language that was spoken during the period for, this is the quote, "I refuse to whitewash history." I love Mildred Taylor. I think she's fantastic. So those are the ones for the banned prompt. Banned prompt? These are the banned books for the first prompt. So I'm just going to shift the books along. This was the biggest one that I had recommendations for, because I think there were just so many good books that people should read. So I had lots of recommendations to share and lots of possibilities for myself. The second prompt. So the second prompt for the Bootcamp Readathon is Hummer, and that is to read a book with military characters. Now, I am a fantasy reader, so there are lots of military fantasies. So that is where my brain is going to go with this. However, there were a couple of historical novels that I thought I could use this for. So I have a copy of Pulled Up by Winston Graham. I have a copy of, it's coming to me, The Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell. But what I'm going to go for is, rather than starting a new series, I am going to read, well, Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. So this is a reread. This is a reread that I've been trying to read since June 2022. And I just hadn't picked it back up again since then. I love this book. This was a brilliant book. This is an amazing book. I love the Stormlight Archive. But as you can see, it's very, very chunky. It's a very big, beefy book. Also, this is my pretty copy. This is my beautiful, beautiful copy. So this is the American hardback, where I have the lovely end pages. We have the lovely yellow on the front cover. And I don't know if you can see, but there is an embossed shard blade on there, which is, you can just about see, which is the weapons used in this book series. And then the cover is done by Kraken Arts, I think. And they will be releasing all of them as the books come out. So because it's pretty, I just have to sit and read in my house. It can't follow me around. I'm not audiobooking. I want to read from this copy and have a wonderful time. So it involves a lot of set aside time to be physically reading, which I just really couldn't fit in. But start of the year, I feel ready. I feel ready to tackle this. Might not be to the end. I might read everything else first and then have this one, and then it kind of like tack into February. But I'm really excited to pick this up and read it. Okay, prompt number 3 is Class A to read a graphic novel. So I have already recommended to you Genderqueer. So if you wanted to double up on prompts, banned book and graphic novel, you are welcome. I am possibly going to go for 1 or 2 books that I've got out of the library previously, and then it just didn't fit into my TBR. And both of them are kind of exploring what it's like to be a refugee. I think this is a subject it's always kind of a hot topic, really. There is a lot of policies around immigration and around a refugee crisis being discussed in governments and things at the time, and it just feels awful. And I definitely want to kind of connect more to the human side of it and the individual stories. So I have 2 options for this. I have a middle grade, When Stars Are Scattered by Omar Mohammed and Victoria Jameson. So this is a memoir of Omar and his brother and kind of what they went through. The other option I have, and it's a middle grade, I don't know if I said that or not. The other option, I'm not sure what the age range is, but it's called Illegal, and it is by Owen Colfer and Andrew Duncan, and it is illustrated by Giovanni Regano. So either one of those, whichever one I can get out my library, I will be using for this. Moving on to prompt number 4. The tea is still drinkable. That's nice. Prompt number 4 is, I think it's to read books by a BIPOC author. That's for Luke. Yep, it's Burpees. So read a book by a Black, Indigenous, or person of colour author. So I know exactly who I'm going to be reading for this one, but I thought I'd just do a few recommendations So here we go. So my first recommendation is Felix Ever After by Kason Calendar. So Felix Ever After is a story of a trans boy, and it's his time sort of at the summer between going to college, just hanging out with his friends, and sort of finding where he fits in. He also really loves kind of like, he's got a little soft spot for like love stories and things like that, but doesn't feel that he will ever find love or fall in love. There is also an an incident that happens early on in here which kind of devastates him a little bit, so he starts to go down a little bit of a detective revenge path to get his own back via the use of social media. And then there's kind of a little bit of messy drama, but ultimately this is just about Felix. This is just about Felix being worthy of love, and he absolutely is, and he's gorgeous, and I love this book. I love this book a lot. It's absolutely so full of heart, so definitely pick this one up. And Kason Calendar is a Black author. I have The Rest of Fantasy. That's the only contemporary. That's a YA contemporary. The Rest of Fantasy. So if you want fantasy book recommendations, hello. So I've gone for kind of like quite light's not the wrong word, but like not too high fantasy epic. The most epic one I have is a YA, and this is An Ember in the Ashes by Saga Tahir. And this is quite a popular YA fantasy. This first book has like sets the groundwork for the series. The series, I would say, is kind of a really nice transitional series. So if you're someone that reads YA and you really want to get into adult, this is a really fantastic series to read to kind of make that transition. Because the first book is very YA. It has a lot of YA tropes in here. It's very fast-paced. You've got some very clear kind of characters you're following. But as the books progress, the world expands, the kind of the plot lines expands, and it kind of goes more into adult territory. And I just love Saga Tahir's like plotting. Like, she knew exactly where she was going with this. It was just beat for beat, you knew. But the pace is very fast in here. So you don't tend to get a fast pace all the time when you're reading high fantasy, but it has kind of like the qualities of like high fantasy with the detailed world. You get a real sense of place in here. The first book, so you could also use this for Hummer actually as well, because this has got military personnel in it too. So it's got a military school in here. So one of the two of the main characters are soldiers in this army. And I'm not going to try and explain the plot because I'm just going to massively butcher it. I definitely recommend click the book link to Storygraph and read the synopsis there. But it has military personnel, and it is Saga Tahir is of Asian heritage, and it's got a very kind of like Middle Eastern setting. It's a desert fantasy, so it's kind of like got a military aspect to it. It's in this kind of magical world that's kind of like set in a desert, and it's very epic as well. And as you kind of read on, you kind of get there's a vague kind of reference to gods and things in here in the first one, but as the series goes on, they become more prominent. But yes, I do definitely recommend An Ember in the Ashes as a fast-paced fantasy. Slowing things down a little bit, I wouldn't say it's cozy. There's a plot, there's a lot going on, but it's really fun. And that is Zen Cho's The Order of the Pale Moon Reflected in Water. This is a little novella, and I love it so much. I find this really warm, really hilarious. The kind of thing that sold me on it was a bandit walks into a coffee house, and I was like, that was me sold. I was like, we have a coffee house, we have a bandit walking in there. This sounds like it's funny. It sounds like it's a setup for a joke. And you get that kind of jokey witticism throughout this. You have a nun who's a waitress that kind of in the first opening chapter makes friends with these bandits, and then their paths cross briefly, and then as the story progresses they cross again, and this has got elements of kind of a heist story. It's got a found family, it's got outlaws, it's got a strong female protagonist who is amazing. She's so good. Zencho writes amazing strong female protagonists, and I love them all. So this is really, really fun, and it's really tiny. So you definitely will have a wonderful time in here. It has got more of a martial arts kind of feel to it. Yeah. I was trying to remember. Yeah, there's a little bit of deity-ishness, but mainly like heist, bandits, outlaws, that kind of vibe in here. It's a lot of fun. It's so good. So that is a option for. Where were we on this one? Oh yeah, BIPOC authors. Zencho is of Malaysian heritage. There we go. I was like, what are we doing? I'm recommending a load of fantasy books. It's not a fantasy prompt. Sorry, it's late. It's very late, but we're doing this now. My final recommendation for you is Sing Me to Sleep by Gabby Burton, and I loved this. This is YA fantasy. We have a siren as the protagonist who is fighting this kind of deep desire inside herself to kill, and she manages to get it under control by kind of like selling herself as like a mercenary assassin, so people will hire her. So she kind of does that on the down low. She's kind of going through sort of like a military training school, and then they get kind of sectioned off to different parts of this island where the whole world is set on. And anyway, she ends up being called on to investigate a load of murders that she committed. So I love that type of messiness. The characters in here were so much fun. I love our protagonist. There's a real kind of close-knit family here. There's a little bit of romance. The world is so well done. It's really fascinating. There's a lot of kind of like different types of magic and things in here. There's like an oppressive kind of class system in here as well. Just love it so much. It's brilliant. Again, it's got like a nice kind of it kind of throws in straight from the beginning. It's got a fastish pace, but there is still a lot of room for the characters to breathe and for you to kind of get to know them and things to slow up. I really, really enjoyed this one. Gabby Burton is a Black author, so it definitely fits that prompt. But the book I'm going for, surprise, it's not a fantasy. It's a book that I've had on my shelf for a really long time. I really want to read, and it just hasn't been its moment. So it's going to be its moment in January, and that is Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. I hear great things about this book. I've heard great things about this book for a long time. I just haven't read it yet, but I'm going to this month. It's going to happen. I'm excited for this. It's going to be good. I think it's kind of a bit of a black comedy. Queenie kind of is not entirely sure what's going on with her life. I think we hear a lot about things that have happened in her past. I think she's in like kind of a tricky position. I don't know if she's got a little bit of mental health struggles going on. But it's kind of, I don't really know any more than that. It's about Queenie, and I hear really good things. I hear that there's a certain amount of funniness to it, but there's a certain amount of kind of emotional, like, not gut punchy, but makes you feel sad. Makes you feel for the character, I think. Don't know any more than that, so I'm going to stop waffling now. But this is what I'm going to be reading for the prompt of Burpees. Okay, where have we got to? We are now on a book over 400 pages. So I will recommend to you again An Ember in the Ashes. This is 448 pages as An Ember in the Ashes. So there you go. You can hit a couple of prompts with An Ember in the Ashes. You can also hit a couple of prompts with, disappeared, it's hiding down here, The Hate You Give. This is also over 400 pages. It is 400 and... nope, that's the acknowledgements. We're here. Nope, that's the author's note. Yes, 438 pages in The Hate You Give. So there you go. Cross those as you will. The book I'm going to be reading, however, is another book that I've kind of had on my TBRs and never got around to reading. But again, I feel it's its time. and that is Thunderhead by Neil Schusterman, the second book in the arc of the Scythe series. I just need to read it. I just need to read it, and I feel January it's going to happen. So Scythe is a YA dystopia where humans have moved on so much that they have conquered all death. They can literally bring you back to life. The only thing that like kills you is by being culled by a scythe, because they've got to keep the populations down so it doesn't keep overflowing. So the best way they think to do this is to have like random people are kind of trained to be like Grim Reapers, executioners, and it looks at the morality of that and how that kind of goes about. And I really found Scythe really fascinating and interesting, and I'm keen to see where it goes in the rest of the series. I'm just going to move my books around because I've got this pile of books here that's kind of like falling on top of me. So that was a read a book over 400 pages for the pull-ups. Now we're going to go low crawl as the next prompt, and this is to read a book under 100 pages. I have no recommendations for this. I had a look through my bookshelves, and like the smallest books I have, novellas, all my novellas are at least 130 pages. My middle grade is pretty much all over 100 pages. So I was a bit stumped, but I have got a collection of short stories by Victoria Hislop called The Last Dance and Other Stories, which are all tales inspired by Greece. So I think there's 10 in this collection. So I feel reading one of those would count as less than 100 pages. So I have quite a few different ones to choose from here. So I'm going to read one of those, and that'll count. So 2 more prompts left for the Bootcamp Readathon. Where are we? What was that one? Class 6. Okay, for Class 6, you need to either read a horror novel or an erotica novel. And going for the one that you read the least of. Horror is not my genre. Horror is not my genre at all. But the Shelterbox Book Club did send through Mexican Gothic. I've heard so many people really, really love this. And I'm hoping the Gothic side of it will be more on the spooky, creepy, rather than the body horror freaking me out kind of stuff. So I'm going to push the boat out. I'm going to challenge myself to read a horror. I'm going to read Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Marina Garcia. And hopefully it's going to be fine. I know absolutely nothing about this book. Not a thing. So I'm going into it knowing very, very little. And you'll find out whether or not it works for me. Whether I was able to finish it. We will see. I have no idea. However, I do have a recommendation. So this was my level of horror. So I was really nearly going to like just order the next book in this series, but I was like, actually no, I do want to read this. This is a perfect opportunity to push me into reading this. But the other option was, I have The Haunting of Evelyn Jones by Phil Hicks, which I read recently and really, really loved. So I would want to read The Bewitching of Evelyn Jones, which is the second one. If you're not a horror person, but spooky, creepy seems manageable, I highly recommend this book. This was absolutely perfect in terms of atmosphere, and you get really pulled into the story by the protagonist. There's a really nice found family kind of feel. It's a sort of spooky coastal town. It's around Halloween. It was a lot of fun. And the final prompt is Revelry, and that is to read an audiobook. So I actually have an audiobook lined up for January. So I am part of a physical book club, yes, out in the real world. And the book that has been chosen for January is The Future by Naomi Alderman. And I find that I have been really just enjoying having a book on an audio. So I immediately kind of looked up for this one, and my library has it, and I am able to do a borrow box version of this, so that's perfect. And I didn't really look at the synopsis till I started doing it for this video, and I'm really, really excited about it. It sounds really fun. So it's a dystopia, and like technology has kind of advanced a lot to the point where there's lots of things happening that the world has kind of like been taken over with. So it's kind of being run by businessmen. And so one of the protagonists is kind of like in this company and is starting to kind of like question like the morality side of it. We then have another character who has no idea kind of what's going on, but knows that people are like hunting her, and she's kind of in this like science, like tech place. She doesn't quite know why. I feel like I'm partially misremembering it, but anyway, she feels like people are going to kill her, and then she gets something pings up like saying, do you want me to tell you how to get out of here? And she like has this little app that has like got in contact with her. So I feel like there's going to be some kind of like rebellion against the system. There's going to be these two characters coming together. I'm feeling kind of like sisterhood vibes from this. I really hope that it's as fun as the premise is making it out to be. So that's all my plans for the bootcamp readathon. I've no idea how much I'm going to get through. I may double up on prompts. We will see how it goes as the month goes on, but mad possibilities for each one. So I'm now going to move on to the past and present readathon. So let me reorganize my books. So I haven't decided which ones I'm going to focus on. I think I'm just going to do the mood read and see which ones hit which prompts, and hopefully I will manage to get a line. I'm aiming for a line rather than a blackout on the bingo board. So the first prompt for past is read the oldest book on your TBR. So it doesn't literally mean like you can only read the one that's the absolute oldest, but like an old book that's been hanging around for a while. So I'm going to go for, I've already mentioned it, Queenie. I've already said that this has been on my shelves for a long time and I haven't got to it. It's happening. So that's my option for that one. Prompt number 2 for the past is an old favourite, to reread an old favourite or a book by your favourite author. And when I originally heard this, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do that one because I don't really feel in the mood for rereading. And I totally forgot that this book that I've had and been trying to read since June, it's actually a reread. Just doesn't feel like a reread because this is a new copy, and I read Way of Kings and I read Words of Radiance in 2022. And the next month it was like Oathbringer. Then I was gonna be ready to read Rhythm of War. Unfortunately, I got involved in another readathon. I got really competitive, and this is massive, and I was like, I could read this or I could read 3 other books. I'll go for that one. Then I just kind of like got on my hob journey, and it was just never the right time. But this is actually a reread, so this absolutely counts. It's a favourite book. I'm excited. Then we have bucket list. That's to read a book from your bucket list or that you always meant to get to. Variety of different options for this one. So I could read Stars That Scatter, which would work linking to the Bootcamp Readathon as the graphic novel, because I have picked that up a few times before and really want to read it. I've heard amazing things about it. I know Tallia from Bandana Book Mom absolutely loves that book, and I'm really keen to pick that up. But I have a few books that were picked out by my Mad Much Hair that I haven't opened yet. So I gave him like 20 books that I put all over my bed. I was like, put 7 of these in these little book bags and don't tell me what they are, and I'm going to open them as surprises. That's something I'm doing throughout December, and I haven't like opened them yet, so I don't know what they are. So I could read one of those. Yeah, there's many options. I could look into my series and continuing series. We will see. Moving on to the future. So the first prompt for the future is a new edition. So a recent edition or your newest book. So I have a couple of options for this one. So one option I have for this one is the Red Tent by Anita Diamond. So I heard Jim from Born Again Reader talking about this book, and I thought it sounded really, really fascinating. It sounds like a really amazing feminist novel. It's quite biblical, sort of like reimagining what it would have been like for these Jacob's daughter. So there's Jacob with the 4 wives and 12 sons. And so it kind of like, it really focuses on the women and kind of like what that would have been like for them and like life for them and kind of like birth and all of that kind of stuff. So it sounded really, really fascinating hearing him talk about it. And I'm buddy reading this with a few people, and we've got a little chat going on MJ's channel, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one. So I recently got this one for that buddy read, so that would definitely count. But another one I don't own yet, but this is part of my Read What You Own challenge. So if I read a certain amount of books, I will then be allowed to buy books again, and for every 10 books I read off my shelf, I can then have a possible book to buy in the Boxing Day sale. And top of my list is The Snow Girl by Sophie Anderson, which is a middle grade fantasy. Sophie Anderson's books are always kind of like Slavic folktale. Her writing is amazing, and this one has got some absolutely gorgeous illustrations on it. It's the first Sophie Anderson book we've had in hardback. All her other books have been paperback, so it kind of really feels that publishers are like really appreciating her work and kind of putting her in a lovely little book setting that really shows it all off. So I'm so excited about that one. So that is another possibility should I get hold of that one. The second prompt for the future side of the readathon is New Year's resolution, and that's a book that gets you off to a good start with your reading goals. So for this one, again, it's another book that I don't own yet, but is on my list of if I can read those books and get new ones. And this is The Undertakers by Nicole Glover. I recently read The Conductors and absolutely loved it. The Undertakers is the follow-up to that series. So it's like historical fiction set in America in the 1870s, but it's also well, the first one was a murder mystery. I presume there's going to be a similar thing, and fantasy. So it's historical fiction, fantasy, mystery, which was a wonderful combination. I had an amazing time with that book. So that would be me finishing off a series or like continuing with the series, because I believe there are 2 more books planned, but they aren't directly following on, and they're in like later time periods, but still within that kind of world with magical realism involved. Also, Nicole Glover is a global majority author, and all of the characters and most of the characters in her books are Black. So it would also be hitting that goal of mine, which is to be having 50% of what I'm reading being global majority. So that would definitely work. But again, I don't have that book, so I may have to rethink this should I not end up having that book. So the third prompt for the future is try something new, and that is a colour wheel spin. So I film on my phone, so I can't do a colour wheel at the same time. So what I do in these situations is I have a box of pens, and I pick out a colour from the box of pens. So prepare for noise. Okay, I'm going in. Got this one, don't know what it is. It's red. That's perfect because red 10. There we go. And then I read Snow Girl for that prompt. Do, 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 do. Winner. Thank you very much, red pen. So yes, I'm going to put the red tent in for the try something new prompt. Should I go for that line, or I could keep it in the new edition, depending which line I end up going for, but that worked rather well. So now we've got 2 more prompts. So this is the either or prompt. So the first one is series sort out. So either continue a series you're already reading, or start a new one. And I would continue with Thunderhead. The Undertakers would also count as a continuation, so either or working for those ones, but for the sake of this, going for Thunderhead by Neil Schusterman. Okay, the final prompt for the either or is the BookBud prompt. So have a friend choose your book. So what I thought I'd do for this one is, if you are watching this video, choose a book for me to read. However, I'm going to put in some rules for this. It needs to be a book on my shelf. I don't want to have to go and track down another book or source another book. So if you want to know what's on my shelves, I do a physical TBR, which I will link here. So you can pick from that. I also am earning books, so I have a secret stash of books under my bed. So you could also pick something from that video, and I will then have to earn it to read it. So you can find that video here. And I have an autumn book haul as well. So that's the most recent haul I've done. So I'll also link that video in here. So have a look at some of those if you want to choose a book for me to read. And then all the people that suggest books, I will put all of your suggestions and you into a spinner wheel, and then I'll do a little short spinning the wheel and seeing what book comes up for this thing. So that sounds quite exciting. I quite like that one. That seems like a lot of fun. And the final prompt is the middle section in the board, and that is Moody Monday. So the idea for this one is that Emily and gang have come up with, on Monday you should do a mood read. So then pick whatever Monday you like in January, and on that day just do a mood read. So what I'm going to do for this one is in my December TBR, I picked out 4 books to do a tea and taste with. Sorry, it is very late and I just know my eyes are going, so I'm just blinking quite a lot. So sorry if my eyes being a bit weird at the moment. Where was I? Tea and taste. So I have picked out 4 books, although I couldn't decide on one, so I might just read 5, and I'm going to read a couple of chapters of each one and then have a little chat about what I think of them, drink tea, and then decide which one I feel the most in the mood for, and then that would be my Moody Monday read. That's what I'm going to do for that one. If you want to know what the books are for that tea and taste, I will link the December TBR here so you can go and have a look at that. That is everything. That is all of the possibilities for January. And I've already spoken about the buddy read, which was the Red Tent. So yes, I'll be chatting on MJ's Discord about that one. If you would like to join in that buddy read, the link for MJ's Discord I will put below, and you can come and jump into that book thread chat with us all in there. We've got a few people reading and it's going to be a lot of fun. So what books have I gathered? Let's bring them all in. Okay, so currently my possibilities... Oh, it is there. My possibilities for this month are Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson, which will hit 2 of the Readathon prompts. Queenie, also on 2 of the Readathon prompts, by Candice Carty-Williams. Anitha Diamante, The Red Tent, which fits in the past and present, past and future Readathon. So I keep wanting to call it the past and present, past and future Readathon. Thunderhead by Neil Schusterman, which fits both Readathons. One of the short stories from Victoria Hislop's The Last Dance collection, which fits in the Bootcamp Readathon. A Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Marina Garcia, which fits in the Bootcamp Readathon. And I also have books that I haven't yet got hold of, so possibly All American Boys by Jason Ramos and Brenton Kelly, possibly When Stars Are Scattered by Omar Mohammed and Victoria somebody, where I mentioned it earlier and I put my notes down somewhere and I'm not sure where they are. Possibly those, possibly The Snow Girl, possibly The Undertakers. We will see, we will see. And the audiobook The Future. So I've got a lot of different things to try. We will see what comes up, and I will be doing that short video where I play one roll of the dice for my TBR book game, Bookworms and Bookladders, which will help me decide which book to read first. Apart from Oathbringer, which is going to be definitely like in the second part of the month. I want to get a few things ticked off first before I start on Oathbringer. So there we go. Let me know if you're taking in any of these readathons, if you have any thoughts on any of the books I've mentioned, and what you are most excited to be reading in January. Happy reading, everyone.